Welcome to the weekend edition of Technical Analysis here in Growth Trade. Today is the 14th of June, 2013. My name is Miguel Vences, a trader, mentor, and analyst here in Growth Trade. Today covering for Des, who is on his way to Vegas for our mentorship this weekend. And so it is my pleasure to bring you today this weekend edition. And a rather interesting one because the markets have been going down for the past couple of weeks. Today was not the exception. Today the Dow was to the downside 0.7%, the S&P 0.6%, Nasdaq 0.64%, Russell's 0.56%, and the VIX confirming that move 4.45% to the upside. But let's go to the chart. This is the daily chart of the S&P. I know I have a lot of lines, but this is the daily chart, so pay attention to the white trend like this one and this one that I just highlighted, because those are my daily trend lines. And just take a look at the lower trend line, which I drawing from this low to this low, support, support. So it is a very solid trend line. It's very, very close to this yellow line, which is a weekly line of support. So they are pretty close, even though they don't quite match. So we know that this white trend line is pretty solid. And I also drew this upper line of support from this high to this lower high. And as we can see, what it gives us, it's a symmetrical triangle. Yesterday, we traded from support to resistance, and today we traded within this symmetrical triangle. So there is still no indication or whether this symmetrical triangle will be resolved to the upside or the downside. So during the next couple of days of next week, I will be watching this trend line, which as we can see is very close to this weekly trend line. And so if we break this line of support, we could have a serious move to the downside. Now these yellow lines are my two weekly trend lines on the upper side. Both of them, as you can see, coincide with this high. And as we can see today, we did a touch and go. So this line seems to be pretty solid too, confirmed by this touch and go and this touch and go both days. So on the weekly, we would have to cross this line to get a significant move to the downside. And I suppose the good news is that when we go to the monthly, which is this pink line, in the S&P, we have a strong level of support right there. So the markets would have to be extremely, extremely weak to break down that line of support. Now going back to the daily chart, we can see that to the upside, we have a good amount, a good space that we could trade up if we are able to break out of this upper line of resistance. But a symmetrical triangle can break either way. And so we'll have to look for Monday or Tuesday to get more indications of what is going to happen with the resolution of this symmetrical triangle. In the Dow, we have a very similar pattern. We also have this symmetrical triangle. We traded today within that triangle, no resolution, and two very important lines of support, the weekly and the daily. And now something that is interesting to note is that in the monthly chart of the Dow, this pink line and this pink line are our strongest lines, trend lines, and so it does not have as much support as the S&P. In the monthly chart, the next level of support that we would be able to find would be the one from this line that I drew from this swing low, where it worked as support, resistance, resistance, resistance. And so it would not be until this zone, the 14,000, that we would have a strong level of support. So if this symmetrical triangle was to break down in the Dow, we would have a little more trouble finding a floor. As for the Nasdaq, similar story, symmetrical triangle. Today we traded within the symmetrical triangle. The big difference come in the form of this pink monthly line, which would be resistance in case we break out of this symmetrical triangle. Whereas if we break down, we would have a little more space to go before we find monthly support. In the weekly chart, however, as we can see this yellow line, we still have places to go for to the next weekly line of resistance. and the Russells. We can also see this symmetrical triangle. This is very curious. I mean, the indexes are always pretty similar, but in this particular case, I would expect a pretty big move in the markets once they make up their mind, because all of the indices are doing exactly the same as far as trading pattern. So we can also see the symmetrical triangle in the daily chart. In the weekly chart, we do have what is more like a pullback to this line of support. So we could, in the weekly, so for next week, we could potentially have an upside week once, if, of course, if we break out of this symmetrical triangle, there is space to the next logical place of resistance, which also lines up with resistance in the monthly. So I think that gives us a good picture of what is coming up next week. Crucial day on Monday and Tuesday to see how this pattern is resolved. So make sure you prepare for either probability. So don't forget to take a look at your V-newsletter. Remember, you can try it for free. And don't forget that here in Grok Trade, you have the best of technical analysis delivered to you every day via your phone, your computer, any way you can connect to the internet. Also, please do remember, you have any Spanish-speaking friends who are learning to trade the market or who trade the market and would be appreciative of good technical analysis for free, please send them our way. We have daily videos and weekly videos here in Grok Trade. Have a wonderful weekend, and greetings to our mentors and students right there in Vegas, where I'll be joining them next week.